Hi, it's Chris Croft here from Successful Trainers, and I want to talk to you today about notes. People love it if you give out good notes when you do a talk. But the big question with notes really is when to give them out. Do you give them out before, during, or after? And this is the big dilemma really. So one option you've got is you could give out notes before. So you could give out, say, a book like this, and it's maybe got 20 or 30 pages for a day of training, just printed on a colour printer. It only costs £1 to make. That's one option. Now, if you do this, the problem is that they're going to read ahead, and they're going to be looking at the next bit while you're still talking about the first bit. So there are two ways to prevent that. And one of them is to control the audience and to say, look, don't go on to the next page till I tell you. And then if you see somebody doing it, you could say, excuse me, don't go on to the next page. Or are you already bored with what I'm saying? Because you need to focus on this bit before we get to the next bit. So that's one option to control the audience. Another option is to give them out before, but for them to be incomplete. So when I went to see Brian Tracy, who was brilliant, by the way, he's a god, he gave out a book at the beginning and it had lots of gaps. So he said, you know, the salesman's biggest fear is, and then it was just a gap. And then he would then say, so therefore the thing you have to do is, and there was another gap. So while we were watching Brian Tracy, we were waiting to hear, what is the biggest fear? Rejection, right. And we all quickly filled it in. So therefore, what does he do to avoid rejection? And we all wrote it down. So we were absolutely glued to his words. And we couldn't read it ahead of time because it was just full of gaps. So that's another way you can do it. And then at the end, they've got a book of notes that's been filled in by them, and they're more likely to remember what's in there because they've written it themselves. So you can give it out before and either control them or they fill in the gaps, or a mixture of the two. So that's one option. And if you're going to do that, a good way to do it is, a good way to actually make it is to buy some backs like that and some fronts that just have a little hole in. Because then you could just copy all the pages and then staple it and you end up with quite a nice workbook. So you can see that first bit is just showing through from there. And a little trick that I've learned is that the front needs to be thinner than the back, because you want the back to be quite thick to give it some body. And then you want a nice thin front that you can open up easily. So get those two made, and obviously you can have your logo on the bottom and that sort of thing. So that's one option. Now, another option is to give the notes out during. So this is much better really from the point of view of control. But if you're going to do this, you need to have loose notes. You have to have just pages that you give out as you go along. And that's fine. And then you just have a folder for them to put it in. And in the folder inside, you probably have a welcome page, which is color printed, maybe just some spare paper for them to write on. And these folders that I use that come from a company called Abbey Plastics, who I really like, you can just slide in different fronts for whatever subject it is that you're going to be teaching. And you can even put something in on the spine there with the name of your company, so that when it's on their bookshelf, they're going to see it on the spine and they're always going to remember Chris Croft Training. So I like these white folders. They take a bit of time to prepare because you have to put the fronts in, you have to put the spines in, you have to put the insides in. I usually do that while I'm watching television, but it's still a bit of a hassle. And then when you go to do a training course, you need to take maybe 20 of these, which is quite a big, heavy box. So although these only cost a couple of pounds each, the transport is significant. And clearly, if you're going by train or aeroplane or something, it starts to be a real issue. Whereas if you're doing this type of thing, although it's not loose, it's pre-stapled, it's much more transportable. It's cheaper, it's quicker to make, and it's more transportable. So I've mostly changed over to these now. Another limitation of pre-printing is you can't change what you do. So you've got to do everything. So if I'm doing project management, I know what I'm going to do and I have to do all of it. So that's already in the book, it's fine. But some more open-ended workshop-y type days, if I don't know what I'm going to do exactly, then I might well have to go for this type of a format, because then I can decide which pages to give out. And if we spend ages discussing a particular thing, then I can miss out some other parts, or I can change the order depending on what they want to know about. So something like time management, where I vary what I say, I might want to go for this. The third option is to give out notes afterwards. So you talk all day, and at the end you say, and here's the pack. Now, this is really the worst of the three, for sure, because they can't write on the notes, and they'll be worrying all day, is it going to be in the notes? So you have to keep reassuring them this will be in the notes, but they don't really like to get given the notes at the end, and they're probably never even going to look at them. Whereas at least with these other two options, they're looking at them during the day. So this one is not great, I don't think. I mean, clearly you don't have the problem of them reading ahead, so that's good. But it's really, really not as good because they can't write on them and they don't know what's coming up. So I wouldn't give out notes at the end. I would always find a way to either give it to them at the beginning, but with gaps, or give it to them during. So those are some of the issues when you're actually running a training session for a day or even for an hour. So if I do a 1 hour talk on negotiating, what I do is I give them out a page beforehand. If it's a big audience, there's a page on each of their chairs before they come in. And it's got lots of gaps, Brian Tracy style, and they have to write in the gaps as they go along. And on the bottom, it's got my phone number and my website. So they're going to keep that page because it's got all the notes and they've got my address on the bottom. With a big audience, and if it's a short talk, you don't have time to give stuff out during. You have to put it out on the chairs beforehand. But a smaller group and a longer day, you can give notes out during. So that's one of the things you'll need to think about if you're going to run a training course. One of the many things that we cover on the Successful Trainers program. If you want to know more, give us a call. Just go to successfultrainers.com, press the button. You'll get to see my diary. You can book in a call and we can talk, and that would be great. Call me if you think that I can help you to become a freelance trainer.